Hello, everyone. This is PJ Gordon speaking, and welcome to our Illinois Land IDHD or Institute on Disability Healing Development and the Autism Program of Illinois webinar series. Tonight, we will have a discussion panel on making the transition. The goal of this project is to support young adults with disabilities of color transition from high school to adulthood. The diverse panel of leaders will share insights and information to help those young adults navigate their transition journey and make positive change in their communities. We'd like to let you all know that we will have live captioning available. And if you are on right now, I will post the link in the chat. That way you can not only watch the video, but you can also follow along with the live captioning as well on the another screen. So let me go ahead and post it right now. And I will post the link throughout the panel. And so before we get into the panel, we would like to mention a few housekeeping rules. For all the attendees that are coming in right now, or if you're already in, we ask that you be muted and turn your video off for the whole event. However, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask the panelists, you may put your questions in the chat at any time. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the panel. And I will now turn it over to Jay Jin, and he will talk about trigger warnings that will that may be in the panel or may come up.
Good evening, everybody. And again, thank you all for being here with us today. As TJ said, my name is Jay-Jin Bach, and as we go through the different topics of conversation today, we may address some sensitive topics such as police violence and trauma and coping with stress and anxiety. Though we will not go into specific details or graphic detail, we did want to just let you know that we may touch upon some sensitive topics, and we encourage you and invite you to please take care of yourselves if as these come up. We won't be offended or bothered if you need to step away or do you want to, and we also ask just again, just say, do anything to take care of yourself. So thank you. I'm going to turn it over to our moderators, Corbin and Lino, who will facilitate the introductions and the rest of our discussions today.
Everyone, my name is Corbin Bowen, and I worked in partnership with Lino on this project. So welcome and thank you.
Hello, my name is Lino. I'm currently a senior at UIC. I've been part of the DHD program at UIC for all my 4 years. So long resident of Chicago, so I'm very happy for you guys to be here, and we're excited to speak to you all today. And we also would like to introduce you guys to the panelists that will be speaking and sharing their experiences as well. So thank you.
So just moving down the list, we have TJ. You can say hi. And we have Jay Jin, who you also had the pleasure of hearing from. Next, we have Brittany King. If you don't mind saying hello and, you know, who you're affiliated with or your experiences, that would be great. Is Brittany here?
So Brittany and TJ, I think they were together. And are you muted? Always good to double check.
Oh yes, sorry about that. Yeah, unfortunately, actually, Brittany is coming in right now. Introduction.
Hello, I'm
Hi.
Britt, and I am the Empowered Fifi Coordinator of Access Living.
Thank you. Next, we have Noah Ohashi. If you can introduce yourself and who you're affiliated with.
Hello everyone, this is Noah Ohashi, he, him. I'm affiliated with Chicago Adapt. I'm co-coordinator of Chicago Adapt, which is disability rights organization, and also Connecting Dot International. I'm president of the organization, which is UIC student org that for international student and immigrants and undocumented student with disabilities. Yeah, that's.
Thank you for that, Noah. And last but definitely not least, we have Esmeralda Fernandez.
Hi everyone, I'm Esmeralda. I am a DHD and psychology major at UIC.
Awesome, thank you. So we're just going to jump into our discussion. So the first topic that we're going to talk about, it's going to be about quality of education. So our panelists, you can all feel free to answer as you see fit. So our first question is, how has your education informed your self-advocacy?
I think that's Jay that wants to spend. No, he's recording. I'm sorry.
No, I can jump in. So it's a great question. I would say looking back at my education experience with high school, college, the majority of like mainstream education really did not have a huge impact on my self-advocacy ability. Even when I was in special ed, I identify as having a couple of disabilities, low vision and years of epilepsy. And even in my special ed interactions with special ed teachers and orientation mobility instructors, they gave me a lot of technical knowledge and practical skills, but the idea of like speaking up for myself and self-advocacy, it didn't hit me until I was in college, and I learned it from other folks with disabilities, which I am eternally grateful for. So that was my experience with, in terms of like my personal connection with education and self-advocacy.
This is Brittany, and I think that my education laid the foundation for my advocacy work. My mom made sure that I went to a private all-girls school in high school, and in that we learned about our rights as women and our privileges and just how we came through the system as far as women's suffrage, and that there was a lot that women went through, especially a woman of color. So I think that kind of laid the foundation so that when I went on to college, I learned more about what I could do for me and how I could advocate for myself, essentially. And then I actually acquired my disability in college. So that way, when I came out of school to rehab, I actually already knew that I could advocate for myself. And I think that Access Living did a great job in teaching me the rights of people with disabilities. And then it just kind of layered on from there so that I knew where to go. And so I think my foundation encouraged me to do more.
I will say yes too. By the way, this is Noah. in different contents, because I came from Japan 3 years ago, which is all my education, young time. I don't know if young time is right English or not, but when I was young, because I have ADHD, autism, so the teacher were kind of pushing my parents to go to special school that is not what the mainstream, but me and my parents fought for it, to keep being in the mainstream school. And also, because I disclose my my identity as transgender, in Japan, we have a uniform that the guy needs to wear the button up shirt and a girl needs to wear skirt. And I hate it, and I need to push the teacher and wear the uniform, the guy's uniform, and like go to school, which was kind of like people saw me like awkward, weirdo. But because I already had autism, they didn't know whether I'm weird because I have autism or because I'm transgender. It was like everyone was questioning for it, but I was, yeah. In sense that I need to I need to stand up for myself to be who I am, and to be comfortable in the environment who I am. And in sense of that, I kind of learned from younger age.
That's interesting. We've already gotten 3 very distinct backgrounds, and we'll have Esmeralda speak on this too, since she's a student of disability and human development. So for her perspective, would be also interesting.
Yeah, so I've actually had a very unique experience, I would say. Like, I am a psychology and DHD major, and I think they go perfectly together because psychology does deal with like mental illnesses, and DHD kind of opens up a different perspective of accepting them and kind of like opening up to the idea that, you know, one day we might all become disabled, we might have some sort of disability. And that's kind of opened my eyes because I come from a Hispanic culture, and in my Hispanic culture, it's not very accepting. Like, people don't really want to accept the fact that we will become disabled, or the fact that we have different mental disabilities. And my brother in particular, it seems like he might have ADHD, just because I noticed that he has concentration issues and he doesn't really focus on his homework. He gets distracted very easily. And I've talked to my mom about it, and she just kind of denies the fact that like he might have that. She just kind of says, no, I don't want to like diagnose him. I don't want to accept the fact that he might have that, because they're very afraid of the medication and the medical world. But I just tell her that no, it's not all about the medicine. It's about the fact that he will have some sort of accommodation. Like, teachers will be able to listen to him and know that, okay, he might have this. Let's give him this research, this additional time, or let's help him with this. So I feel like in that way, my education has helped my self advocacy, because I advocate not only for my family, but for myself. And I try to think about topics in a different light.
Awesome. Does anybody want to respond to that? Because I think that's actually a great leeway into the next question.
Sure, I could add to what's being said already. My name is TJ, by the way. Sorry that I was silent earlier. I was also doing some administrative stuff. So my apologies for not introducing myself earlier. I think to dive into how I was brought into self-advocacy. For me, it first started with how to fight by self-hate of being disabled. I didn't like the fact that I was autistic at first. I thought it was quote unquote uncool to be autistic, but that's until I met cool disabled people doing great things, and I met more autistic people doing great things to realize, wait, this disability thing could actually work. And add to the fact that I have been in higher education for a long time as a student or as a researcher. I feel I have the responsibility to use the knowledge that I've learned in school and in life and bring it to the disability community. And pretty much I feel like it's my responsibility to make a better world for all disabled people, especially disabled people of color.
Awesome. And I think what we have heard already is that, you know, through different parts of everybody's life, whether that be elementary or high school, even college, that's how some people got their start in advocacy work, or not at all. And in that process of not even getting, you know, like that example of how to be a self-advocate, you learned on your own. And I think that's a great segue into the second question, which is, what do you wish was taught that would have made a significant difference in the perception or your perception of disability?
This is Brittany speaking, and I totally believe that disability education, as in like how people with disabilities get their rights or how they got their rights far back in the day, as far as the Capitol crawl, and just how we came to have all these rights that we have now would have been a tremendous help, because I know I went through a large phase of depression, and I believe that could have all been avoided, and I could have been this bright, bubbly person I am now had I had known that there are rights for people who are disabled. And then even as basic as teaching it within the Constitution, because the ADA is a constitutional identity, and I think that would have helped more tremendously. And I wish that for the future, even as my daughter grows.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, go ahead, TJ.
This TJ speaking, and considering that I went through the special education system in Chicago, and I also received services at some point in college to address to high school, especially to transition from high school to adulthood, no matter where you go. I wish I would have taught about making money earlier and sooner. In fact, I wish I was encouraged to learn how to make money and save money or get into the work field sooner. I think there's an assumption that you don't need to work. If you have a disability, you don't need to work. You just need that check, you'll be fine. But $700 a month is not enough to survive. Considering rent in Chicago alone is very high, and then you got to count all other essential needs. It's best if we could learn how to apply for jobs, how to keep a job, or which field you want to get into. I think that could be a skill for high schoolers, especially high schoolers in special ed, to learn. Even if they don't want to go to college, that's okay, as long as they learn, okay, I need a job, I need to make money. What skills do I have already that I can use in whichever job I want to get into? And how can I keep the job so I can eat and live and prosper?
Yeah, this is Jay Jin. I appreciate TJ you mentioning employment. That wasn't even enter my mind in terms of like responding to this question. But I agree with both TJ and Brittany's comments. I really would have loved in like social studies class or history class and learning about the civil rights movement, the inclusion of disability justice protests and like the Capitol crawl and those types of significant or even passages of legislation or protests alongside uh, civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King and the impact that they've had, not as a comparison, but also just the inclusion of, in the fight for human rights and equality and equity, that those of us who identify as disabled also fight, bullying and othering and it's, and I've had a history of being marginalized and that the civil rights movements and all those important advancements and steps forward around being seen and being heard also applies to those of us who are disabled, who are disenfranchised too. And to TJ's point, looking back, it's like I found it. I remember as a high schooler thinking it was silly when I had to take home ec or how to fill out a checkbook. And in my adult life now, I think it would have been much more. It's those types of classes or information about those practical, really practical skills of how to, find a job, how to fill out a resume, how to interview, how to manage your money, how to look for a job, and what a job, what professionalism and work ethic is, as well as kind of like moving into adulthood, what that entails and practical skills. I would love for a teacher or a mentor or someone to sit me down and say, "This is what it is," and as opposed to kind of like the idea of, "Oh, you're 21, you graduated, now figure it out for yourself." Um, yeah. Hopefully that made sense.
If there have a time, I will go, but do you have a time?
No, please share. No, please share.
So this is Noah. For me, I'm totally against different content because in Japan, we don't have a civil rights movement. We don't have a disability rights movement until like recently. So the biggest thing is I would love to learn how, like, if the school could teach us how to cope, because as Asian community, I'm from kind of different perspective of identity, because I am born in Japan, but my parents is from Filipino and Korean, and so basically our multiracial within the Japanese culture is a little bit different, but still within our community and my family, the having autism or having ADHD is due to the parents had something did bad or didn't taught the kids correctly. So I was this is content warning as a violence. I was had a lot of physical abuse that I went through, and at school, then you get bullied, and so it's like at home and school, like both are not like safe space for me, like because I didn't like had physical disability until like older age. So I look regular people, and having invisible disability, I wanted to learn first, having disability is not stigma, but it's not bad thing, or like having a sense of pride or identity. I never thought in that sense that disability is one source of identity. That's one thing I wanted to learn when I was in school. And second thing is, yeah, life is tough. That's like not only disabled people, but disabled people is having more barrier layer of the obstacles. So like how to cope within the difficult situation. I think that make a lot of differences of my mental health currently, like I'm facing. So I think that I really wish that school taught to me. Yeah.
Thank you all for sharing. And actually, we're going to wrap up this portion about education. But I do appreciate all of your responses. It's a lot. So the last question is, if you had an IEP plan, which is an individualized education plan in school, do you think that the accommodations were adequate? And what would you tell, the school district?
This is Brittany. I didn't have an IEP plan because I didn't acquire my disability until college, but in college, I actually had a plan. So I feel like in the beginning, I didn't disclose my disability and my needs in that nature because I wasn't, like we've said already, I wasn't prideful about it or knowledgeable about what is what I am accommodated for and all my different accommodations. But then when I found out, it was weird because I realized that all these things that are accommodating for people with disabilities are things that I could have used in my previous college or schooling, of like a note taker, extra time on tests. This is just basic things that anyone could benefit from. So I feel like once I found out what those accommodations were, I was like, yes, sign me up right now. And all that time I wasted on like, I'm not gonna disclose. I wasted so much time. My grades fell, and I was like, okay, maybe I should. So yeah, it was definitely a process for me to actually speak up and say, yes, I have a disability. I do need these accommodations, just because there was a lack of pride or lack of knowledge. And I feel like schools need to be more at the forefront of saying, this is what we can do for you. These are your options if you choose to enroll in the program or what have you. So I believe that being more vocal about because I think it's a thin line and it's hard because sometimes you can get people who will probably take advantage of that just to say, but there's worse ways of proving disability. So there's a lot that goes into it, and I get that because my background is actually in education. So I think the sit down part of the discussion is very essential in the schooling academic atmosphere, because there are a lot of people who will be, I don't want to say prideful, but people are reluctant to confess that they have a disability and that they need accommodation. Like I was put there, and I feel like a sit down, even with the counselor, like during intake, is an essential piece that could go into that and make things more smooth for the transition.
This is somebody. Oh, this is Noah. I think even though I had an IEP plan in school, which I didn't have, but the accommodation will be not adequate, because in the sense of individual, like I have an autism, TJ have autism, but our autism is totally like not same. All people have assumption that autistic people are same, like in one box, but like even saying disability individually, people are different and preference is different, and it's really hard to accommodate in like really microscope area. So in the end, it just have, oh, you have a disability, so do you need this and this and this, and you just pick and choose from the, it's like a recipe, kind of like you go into the restaurant and you just choose the menu from whatever they have. But so I don't think it's adequate as much as I want. And second thing is, the reason I also think it's not adequate, and also this is kind of issue of Chicago issue, is when I came to US 3 years ago, I was working at the Access Living at the youth team and helping exactly this topic, that the high school senior year student to transfer from senior high school student to secondary education, or the employment, and basically teaching the disability history and what's IEP and what's gonna happen after you graduate and how do you get accommodation and blah, 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 blah. But the thing is, I went to 4 high school and 2 were white neighborhood. One is Latino neighborhood and one is Black neighborhood. The school IEP program is totally different within similar situation student. Depends on how money school have, even though it's private school, and how much coloring is different. Like if you go into the school, like white neighborhood are so colorful, like they have a color bin and like so pretty, but on like when it goes to Black neighborhood and Latino neighborhood, it's more less color. And also the students' motivation to go to higher education is lower because people want to get money quick. So a student is kind of forced from the parent and the teacher that you should go to employment. So it's kind of like it's more like socioeconomic issue that involves in the school district. So I think that's the reason that I feel like it's more difficult answer in the sense of the individual can have adequate accommodation.
Hi, this is TJ speaking. I did have a IEP in high school, and I also had accommodations. Actually, after I graduated from undergrad in Minnesota, I started to get accommodations more often in my 2 master's programs I was in. As far as IEP, I remember it's mostly, it really depends on the student and also the support of the family members or guardian and the teachers as well. If you have a supportive cast of family members, guardians, and teachers, your IEP will more likely be solid, or at least helpful to where it can guide you to wherever the student needs to go in life, whether the IEP is set up for eventual college success or success after graduation in general, as far as living in the community interdependently or independently, or employment. However, I often seen instances, even now, from stories I hear in schools where if you don't have the support, if the student doesn't have the support from family, guardian, and teachers, then IEPs will set the precedent for failure, pretty much. Their goal for the student may be just to get by the bare minimum, but not fulfill the potential of the student coming out of high school. So, but I'm glad in my case, my IEP plan was more about making sure I am geared towards success, in my case, for college.
Awesome. Thank you all for responding. But we are going to transition to our second topic of the night. And we're going to be talking about the pandemic and the impact on your mental health. And Lino will take over. Thank you all for sharing.
Yeah, thank you all to the panelists again. Hi, my name is Lino Carvajal, he, him. Also, I do want to mention if we have anyone else in the waiting room, TJ can check that. Professor Roshi is waiting at all, or whoever's in charge of the waiting room. But yeah, so topic number 2 would be the pandemic and the impact to mental health. So, you know, to all the panelists, obviously, and to everyone else meeting today virtually on Zoom. These are the times now. So question 1 is, what are the general concerns about the COVID pandemic? So if anyone wants to speak on that or share their experience, you're more than welcome to.
These are just quick general concerns, just so we can kind of set the baseline for the rest of the questions.
I guess I can speak on that. I'd like to start off by saying that I'm actually really proud to be a DHD student, because I feel like the professors were really, how I say it, like they were really aware of the situation. They knew, hey, like this is going on. We need to start changing our classes online and make sure that our students are safe. So they were really cautious about that. Whereas with other classes that I had, they were like, oh, you're still required to come to class until further notice. So they were kind of being more not as lenient with that. And right now, currently, one of my DHD classes actually has extended a lot of the deadlines. She's really aware that students are getting sick or their family members are dying or something's going on, and she understands that you can't actually have the time to do your assignments. Like for me currently, I actually have COVID, so I actually struggled to manage my time with my assignments. And then a few months back, I actually had 2 of my uncles pass away during the same month from COVID. So it has actually really impacted me in a lot of ways. And I feel like the main concerns that I have about COVID is that it has impacted like my school life, my social life. It's really took a big, deep turn in my family problems. And it's just caused so much chaos in my life. But, you know, I'm trying to stay strong. And I think a lot of my professors and a lot of people in my life that they try to be understanding of it and they're not pushing as hard. So I'm really grateful for that.
Hi, Jim. Esmeralda, just thank you for sharing that, and I appreciate your openness with it. I guess the adding on, kind of building on to those considerations is, for me, it's just been kind of with the pandemic and coping with the uncertainty of it, and being the consciousness of having to be sheltering and distancing. I'm generally an introvert, but I crave that when we have the opportunity to get together with friends. I miss the casual camaraderie of being, you know, in different spaces with people and seeing people. those kind of situations. And I find myself, in terms of my mental health, struggling with ups and downs of feeling alone and concerned and worried and anxiety, and trying to find and appreciate the small moments of joy or positivity, where there's opportunities like this to connect with folks, do meetings, or just simple things.
This is Noah. For me, general concern for me was not general, but I have a physical disability and I kind of need to have my personal care attendant almost every day, 8 hours. And I usually hired UIC student, but when when it turned to be online, everyone went back to their suburbs and their homes. So like I need to sit on my bed for almost all day because no one could come to transfer me to the bed to wheelchair and stuff. And the DHS, Department of Human Services, is super slow with their paperwork because they're also working from home. And so like everything was so slow, but the need of like every day to day was like really emotionally like built up as anxiety and like emotional labor just to survive a day to day. And after that, we don't get PPE. So people, we say 6 feet distance, and when people are transferring me, it's like it's here. So it's like no way, it's 6 feet, but we don't have a PPE for the personal care worker because or if I buy it, it will be covered, but I cannot afford so much money. So I think those like microscope many things is general concern, and those concern can build to the mental health condition to be worsened.
No, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, and obviously these are the new times that we're all facing. So I think at this point it may have affected someone some way, somehow, a close relative or a close friend. It's unfortunate, but I mean, these are the times right now. But going on to like a question too of the same topic of pandemic and impact of mental health is I really like this question because it's unique in the sense well, the question is, at what point did the severity of the gravity of the pandemic really hit you? So for example, for me, it was probably back in March, hearing that from a professor in the education department saying early on that, hey, you guys aren't going to come to school. And hearing that was like kind of a joke, but then seeing actually, like spring break being extended, that when it really hit me, we're like, wait, I may not actually be on campus anymore. So like at what point, personally for you, that you like, wow, this is actually a pandemic and like this is real?
Hi everyone, this is TJ speaking, and I'm not in school right now, so I don't have to worry about the impact on education that COVID has on a personal level. However, actually a friend of mine who's working in special education, and I'm sure there's a few more people that I know that works in special education, including my mother, may attest to this. COVID has made things harder, especially trying to transition a high schooler to adulthood, simply because how to connect with the student is disrupted. Some students need the one-on-one time. They need to be in the classroom. But because of COVID, plans have changed. So the transition plan may either be more difficult or may alter. In addition, there's also a sense that people working in special education feel that is their fault. Is their fault, and they carry in like the pain of trying to make sure that the present transition from high school to adulthood, even under adverse conditions from the pandemic, is not their fault at all. I'll say that now. It's not the teacher's fault. It's just the nature of the pandemic, but it could also be the infrastructure of the schools they work in too. What if, let's say, if you are a teacher assistant or a teacher in a special education classroom, and you don't have the resources to help the student to begin with, then it's going to be harder for you as the teacher to ensure that this student get the tools they need to transition from high school to wherever they want to go in adulthood. But it's not necessarily the teacher's fault unless you're a bad teacher. But that's another story.
Well, thank you, TJ. Thank you.
This is Noah. As the part that it hit me strongly was as Chicago Adapt Co-Coordinator, we had we still doing it, but people in the congregating setting, which is nursing home, mental health institute, psychiatric facility, rehabilitation center, and so forth. So those people are way higher rate of the risk of COVID because first of all, they share the room and the bed is within the 6 feet. It's like ridiculous. And so basically we were negotiating with DHS at the same time. Like I, as an international student and working as an international student and immigrant and undocumented student with disabilities, we had a hit with the visa issue because Trump started saying that international students is no longer able to get the student visa. So I was fighting with that and going back to the institution issue and the prison issue for my other organization. So like all the organization is virtually, but like my brain is like running around all over the place. And then it hit me so bad that like I was like burned out like at one point, and I need to be in the hospitalized at the psych unit, and that's how it hit really bad. And but I think those kind of like emotional labor and like because everything is virtually, it takes more time and adapting everything to different forms and thinking about accessibility and also like thinking about the people who are now in like worse place that you can imagine. So that really makes my emotional labor so bad that I need to take time off, like shutting down everything. And that's when I learned like COVID itself is scary, but the effect of COVID can be also really, how do you say, strong in the sense that it makes your life really hard. and seeing things from the mental health facility. Like I was in the hospital and seeing how the COVID is affecting people who are in the hospital who are not getting service at all was also worse thing. So like everything was worse. So yeah, that's when it hit me really bad.
Okay, well, thank you. And I feel like everyone does have, you know, a unique experience and maybe a unique moment in time where they realize like what's going on. You know, whether you see people going into stores or not, forgetting their mask and going back to their car, like that itself is something new that we're seeing for the first time. You know, but wrapping up on this topic of pandemic and impact to mental health is last question is I think is beneficial for all of us is what resources do you need to help that you need help during this time, for anyone, you know, to answer that. Me, I want to share real fast. Living in the southeast side of Chicago, predominantly a community of color and minorities, in the sense that we are like lacked access to, you know, testing. We had to drive, you know, 30 minutes away, an hour away to get tested. But when we do have our, you know, testing sites available, the lines are long and people are sent home. But you know, what ways do you guys think is, you know, resources most beneficial with you or with your community as well?
This is Shajan. I would agree, Lino. You know, there is a need for more services, and I think for just in conversations that I've heard over the past several months with colleagues and acquaintances and folks in the disability community, you know, concerns around because of sheltering at home and staying at home, services, everything from food delivery, you know, many folks with disabilities, depending on their disability, may have limited access to go and get food or go grocery shopping, as well as financial assistance to pay the bills. Many folks with disabilities, you know, even if they do have, even if they are employed, depending on if their ability to work from home or not, or I've heard, you know, I've heard people mention and share that their hours were cut or they were not able to work. So, you know, financial assistance, services and resources to help with groceries, food delivery, as well as transportation. I think are really key.
Yeah. Hi everyone. This is TJ again. And from a student standpoint, especially in Chicago, we could definitely use more mental health resources in the community. If not a mental health clinic, at least a group or support group that students could go to in times of stress. I can only imagine what the high school students are going through. Not only they going through the pandemic, but also the growing pains of transition from teenage years to adulthood with a disability. Throw on top of that situations that they may face at home or in their family. Throw in the issues in the support systems from the government in their communities that fail them, and add to that police violence and attack on the on communities of color. That's a lot of things going on at one time, and I'm sure it's stressful for the students trying to figure things out during that transitional period. So I strongly believe that having a mental health clinic or mental health resource places, or at least a strong support network in the community could help the student a lot in trying to navigate COVID-19 stress, as well as figuring out life after high school.
No, yeah, I appreciate that. That's very true. And I mean, even just simply having this discussion now, you know, for everyone joining, we have over 30 guests. Thank you everyone again. I mean, that this is itself is a seminar of, you know, letting us to express and overall some form of therapy, you know, having some type of social life interaction with other people, not physically, you know, but via Zoom, which is, you know, the best you can do right now. But this itself is something that I think is beneficial, and just continuing to have some type of seminars or even web seminars of speaking these topics of such nature, you know, it brings light to something that makes many be afraid of, or, you know, shy to talk about. But I think this is a perfect transition to our next topic, which is Corbin, do you mind?
So as we talk about education and the pandemic, and based off of mental health, we're going to move into the topic of police violence and hypervigilance for the community. So this is potential trigger warning, but we do hope that this is a safe space to have this discussion. So the first question is, what are your overall frustrations with law enforcement's interactions with people that are neurodivergent? And if particularly for neurodivergent people of color?
This is Brittany. I can speak to that. I feel like a lot of times we as people with disability, or I'm sorry, people of color are treated one way, and then add on top of that whatever your intersectionality is, and it's that much worse. And so I feel like it's unacceptable, and I have hope and I pray that it'll get better, but I don't like that I have to worry about my friend TJ, or I have to worry about my brothers, or even my daughter growing up in this messed up situation. And I know that even from personal experience, as a Black woman of color, I was catcalled a lot throughout high school and just throughout life. And that kind of worries me. And so I cannot imagine going through that as a young girl, on top with a disability on top of that, or whatever your identity is. And so I think that it is a very stressful situation, but I have hope in what's going on now within COVID, that the whole Black Lives Matter movement, that all of that will be reworked and rewarped, and policies will change. Because I think even as a child, I had a good interaction with police officers, in that I was able to utilize them for a ride home one night. I don't know what was going on, but they were like, "Oh, do you want to ride?" Because it was dark and it was questionable, and I appreciated that. But I think now, moving ahead, I worry for my brothers, and I worry for my daughter and my niece and all my other family members, in that it's just not humane the way people are being treated. And I wish we could go back to the simplistic time where they were helping the community, offering people a ride home, offering to carry groceries or what have you. So I think that I have hope that it will change. And I know it won't be overnight, but I am trusting in the process.
This TJ speaking, to add to what Brittany is saying, and you actually hit it right on the head, Brittany, especially being a Black man. I am basically a marked man. The fact that I'm Black male, 6'1", between 350 and 420 pounds, depending on the day, I guess. I have natural hair. Oh, by the way, I have many disabilities, including autism. Oh, by the way, my son is biracial. So, from a previous relationship. So, yeah, I'm scared with it itself that I carry so many targets on my back. That's why Brittany and I, and particularly myself, have been advocating for changes in how law enforcement interact with disabled people of color in particular. We tired of being scared. I'm also am amazed that the schools are heavily policed still, and some of the parents are continuing to push for a relationship between police officers or any law enforcement entities and disabled people of color, which is it's fine to get to know disabled people in general, especially disabled people of color, but at the same time, you're pretty much allowing the police officers to potentially harm disabled people of color at will anytime they want. I wish we could be in a place, and we're working towards that now, hopefully, where we don't have to rely on the police to connect with disabled people of color all the time. It should be up to parents, family members, and community stakeholders to connect with disabled people of color and communities of color everywhere, including Chicago. We don't have to push the whole police force to connect with us all the time. I'm sure they have other things to do, like solve crimes and protect us. I'm not saying it's not okay for police to connect with us. I'm fine with connecting with a good police officer that does his job and recognize that I have a disability. I may have shortcomings or whatever. But don't just put all the focus on police officers. Tell parents, tell the schools, tell community stakeholders to step up too and nurture and protect disabled people of color.
TJ, I think that that's a great segue into a different question, because you guys have talked about your experience with law enforcement, whether it be good or bad. But the general consensus is that what you see on the news is not always the good, especially when it is interactions with people of color, either caretaking for an individual, with a disability or having a disability themselves. So I want to ask if you can describe what resources you would ideally have in place other than police officers.
Can I also go back and add that part? This is Noah. So I experienced first police officers when I having mental health crisis, but it was more like an autistic meltdown. And the thing is, my ID name is legal name, and my gender is still female. So basically, police will suspect that I'm doing something, and I was arrested. So as a transgender, I need to have a speed dial that I could call and talk. Like if the police see me that I am not capable to choose my own decision, that somebody could explain what's going on and what the law enforcement needs to do and not to do. And also, I also put the mental health declaration, which is resources you can get from United States with the lawyer, that if in this situation I will be wanted to treat it like this. In this situation, I wanted to treat it like this. This medication is okay, but this medication, I don't want it. And basically the lawyer will sign it, and they will, if you search it, they have a free lawyers that they will do it for you if you have a disability. So in those sense that having those paper all the time, because I'm scared that when I melt down, I'm more worried that I will be shot. I'm always worried about that. So like before something happens, I just gonna just like trying to call the person and knowing that I have a person who can explain, although like um I could when I melt down I cannot speak. So the person can speak and also I could show my paper and the lawyer can also talk with the police officers, which is, I still feel like it's weird because police needs to protect me, but as a resources to protect myself, they have a couple of resources that I use.
Awesome. And I agree that there's this believability factor that constantly has to be proven, either with your gender, your ethnicity, your disability. You kind of always are forced to prove your worthiness to just be protected by people. And I think that the argument can also be made, maybe we place police in too much of a regard for actually supposed to be the protectors of all when they're also just people. So I do want to get Esmeralda's opinion on this topic as well. I think she has some good insight.
Thank you. So I think that police brutality is a very important topic that we need to discuss. I feel like there's a lot of minorities that are physically and emotionally abused by police, and I can guarantee that there's a million stories of police brutality that we don't know of. It happens all the time, and I think that in the case of people with disabilities, it becomes really difficult because there's no system in place that knows how to approach them. For example, there's a lot of instances where people with intellectual disabilities need some sort of help or there's some sort of conflict. In a lot of those cases, the police is called and they come and arrest them. They don't necessarily know how to interact with them or ask them what's going on. So I think that um, not only that, but people with intellectual disabilities of color are actually the most vulnerable to police brutality because it's the intersectionality issue that arises. So it's not only that they are intellectually disabled, but they are also Black. So that gives them that disadvantage, especially when it comes to police. So my suggestion for that is that there should be some sort of alternative to the police. So perhaps professionals that are trained to interact with them with both physical and mental disabilities. So perhaps therapists, social workers, or professors that interact and work with the police department to improve the system. That way, these type of situations are avoided and there's non-fatal interactions.
Thank you for that. And we have this hot topic now, especially leading up during the elections, about defunding the police and what does that actually mean. And I think that there's like a lot of misconception around what that stands for. And I think Esmeralda, you touched on that, and I think Noah, you touched on it as well. That it doesn't mean a loss of jobs necessarily, of police officers. It just means who can be put in those positions that will have non-fatal interactions with people with disabilities, but also just people in general, because that is just such a prevalent issue. It's almost become its own pandemic in a way. So I do want to ask if you guys are willing to share, do you agree or disagree with less funding for emergency services and to be replaced with maybe a non-emergency hotline or, reporting space?
So I will go with this. I will say it's not about how much money you put in. It's more like how to use that money. The police is asking, or city or stakeholder is actually listening with disabled people's voices and train from disabled people's perspective, or they're doing like, how do they say, the thing, I don't know how to explain, the virtual thing that if you interact with autistic people, what should you do? That's
Simulation.
the, yeah, that one. They were doing those in Chicago police, but that's really dangerous because that's also creates the stigma that police needs to do like this kind of thing, and the money is like waste. Simply, if they could just ask from disabled community, we were we can teach them like individually, like you could tell the story from about it, but because they don't use the money as more productive and disabled people's voice, not centering disabled people's voices, the money is just waste. And if that case, I think the money should go to more communities that could also have a sense of safe space or safe community that people can call if they have panicking or having strong anxiety and stuff, and having more resources, and those things will be much more functional and much more beneficial for disabled people. But I think cutting police officers a law enforcement budget is not like, it's not helping, but even though they have a budget, if they're not using it, it's not beneficial. Like, I don't know whether that makes sense or not, but yeah.
This is Brittany. I wanted to speak after Noah just because I agree with him in that I feel like they shouldn't. Okay, I don't think it should be a loss of money, as Noah said, but there needs to be a shift on how they use the money. So I know out of my own education that some officers are offered CIT training, and that's training in how to interact with people in a crisis. However, I also found out that this training is optional and only happens once in the whole career of a police officer. So maybe if we put more money into making sure these trainings are mandated and mandatory for every officer, and it's a reoccurring thing. So every time you elevate in your status or what have you, you have to re-undergo training. Because I feel like if we take away money from the police, as what everyone is assuming what defund police means, just means that we're going to have angry, pissed off officers who are going to cause more harm than good. So I think just reallocating money in a different way, for example, paying Noah or TJ to speak about what it is to be in a crisis or a situation and having the police there, paying them to express what they would like in their situation to a group of officers every reoccurring time. As I said, it shouldn't be a one-time thing, or then, oh, it's optional. You can go if you want to.
Yeah, this TJ speaking to add on to what Brittany said. Oh, and by the way, warning, shameless plug coming up. And I'll also like to answer the question that one of you all posed. Is there a mentorship program for people with disabilities 22 years old and older? We actually, I wouldn't say it's a mentorship program, but we definitely help mentor people who want to be self-advocates or people who want to transition into whatever they want to go, even if that means independent living. In this particular group, we are the group I referred to is called Advance Your Leadership Power, or AOLP. It is a racial justice and disability justice group housed within one of the independent living centers in Chicago called Access Living. And one of the things we're doing right now is pushing for state legislation, I'm sorry, that will encourage more first responders to help people in crisis get the resources they need and even take them to the resources that they need. And have the police officers come in only if the situation is beyond the control of the first responders. So if it's something criminal or if it's harmful to them and others. And going back to what Noah's saying about reallocating resources, in this instance, we are asking cities and states in Illinois to not defund the police, but to reallocate those resources in training first responders in responding to mental and behavioral health crises or even meltdowns for autistic people, for instance. And they could just take people to whatever they need to go for help and resources, as opposed to cities and towns spending money on building more arsenal, basically, for the police. We don't need that much arsenal. We need more mental health resources or resources in general for people with disabilities. We don't need more guns and armies, because that's pretty much, I think that's pretty much what defunding the police really means, from pretty much going from the police being the military to the police as just protectors of the community that is in partnership with the community, not the military wing of the city, if that makes sense.
And if I may too, oh sorry, Corbin. But if I may too, you know, if I'm sorry, I lost my words here. Corbin, I'm sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you for everybody for sharing on that topic, and I was just gonna let you go ahead and speak.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. No, yeah. But I remember now. But closing off on that topic and basically saying, you know, the fact that us today, you know, giving our information, you know, going on with the coronavirus, we'd like to, you know, maybe rely on like, you know, the World Health Organization, you know, the CDC. But I think that kind of transitions even to like, you know, like our resources putting into, you know, policing in the sense of having professionals, whether it be, you know, professionals and, you know, disability studies, you know, or even professionals of therapists helping, working one-on-one, collaborating with, you know, the police department, the mayor, you know, people that are empowered to overall change and create a more beneficial system that, you know, keeps everyone safe and also, you know, allows the community to grow and, you know, things of that nature. But talking on community is our last segment of the topic today, and that is, where do I fit in the community? So the final question for the panelists today is your final thoughts about the overall discussion, but two, what are your overall reaching goals for this discussion and for the neurodivergent community as well?
Well, this is JJ, and I'm just very grateful for the conversation and just learning and hearing from everybody's different experiences. So I really value this discussion. Thank you all.
I just wanted to say that, you know, we titled this discussion "Making the Transition," and, you know, that also encompasses joining and being a part of a larger community, and, you know, fostering that community can be really difficult during this time, especially, no matter who you are. So I do encourage, everyone who joined us to reach out. I mean, we are all available. Deepak, we've worked with them for the semester, and they've been a form of community for us as well, especially, having to do this virtually. So if you want to reach out, or you need any help, or just want to chat, let us know.
I think it's
Any questions from the chat?
I just wanted to say, this is Brittany. I think it's important, especially right now, to be patient with not only yourself, but with others that you are trying to explain yourself to, because that's the majority of what we need right now to keep everything calm and consistent. So just have patience and know that their change is on the way.
Today's discussion was really interesting because it's really diverse people from different like ethnicity and different backgrounds. So I also learned a lot too. And as my final overreaching goal is to, as much as to tell my story, and that it's not only me, it's disability is intersectionality, that it can intersect with any aspect of your life, so that people can resonate it and have a sense of community. And in the end, I wanted to share a couple resources. I will put in the chat, but they have a lot of resources for mental health. One is National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which can be called, or you can text. And also NAMI Mental Health Hotline, which is also, you can call or text. But not only that, they have a Trans Lifeline, which is for transgender people's lifeline, and also Treadle Project Helpline, which is queer people's hotline, and LGBTQ community hotline, and also Resilience Chicago Rape Advocacy Place is also doing the hotline as well at this time. So like, I just wanted to share that. Not, and also Brave, organization that is like open to Brave. That's the name of the organization. It's Black, queer, disabled people's community that is safe and doing like webinar and stuff. So like, it's not only, I don't say this is not the only place, but you can like learn and get educated and be a part of the community that can be it, and people who are in the community could get more resources, because resources is out there that we can utilize it. And that's it.
Thank you. That is very good information for all and anyone to have.
Hey everyone, this is TJ speaking, and first and foremost, I appreciate you all, Lino and Corbin, for putting this panel together. I think it's a much needed panel for the simple fact that while we talk about the transition from high school to adulthood a lot, we rarely talk about the intersections that takes place during the transition period that makes it more of a challenge to disabled people of color trying to transition from high school to whatever they want to do in adulthood. And I'm also glad that you brought in people from diverse experiences, which all of us are people of color, by the way, to talk about this. So I appreciate y'all too for doing this. With that being said, I don't have a resource share per se, but for all the parents, teachers, and administrators out there who's listening. If you want your student to make a smooth and prosperous transition from high school, whether the student is 18, trying to go to college and beyond, or if your student is aging out at age 22, make sure that the wants and needs are coming from the student themselves, not just the parents, not just the family, not just the people in the school, but really pay attention to the needs and wants of the students and the concerns of the students. Also, if you work in a school that's predominantly white, let's be honest, predominantly white, whether it's a high school in the suburbs or parts of the city, or if you work in a college that's predominantly white. It'll be what helped me in college is not only receiving resources on getting accommodations for your disability or navigating classes or work with a disability, but also being connected to your ethnic group as well by joining student unions that's catered towards a particular community, because they could also help with the transition somewhat, even if that means in a social aspect, like getting connected with the community. I think throwing those resources in there that's specific to a person's ethnicity could come a long way in the transition process.
Thank you guys for allowing us, but we do want to have a quick Q&A session if anybody has any questions. We're going just a little bit over time, which is fine because we're having a great discussion, but I do want to, get to questions if anybody has them.
And please put your, this is JJ, and put your questions in the chat. And as we're waiting for those, just wanted to do our closing, so to speak, kind of like our closing credits as we are at time. Again, just wanted to say a special thank you for Corbin and Lino for their outstanding work with TJ and me and the Chicagoland Disabled People of Color Coalition in moderating this session as part of their DHD 400 class. You all did a fantastic job. And if folks are interested in learning more about the Chicagoland Disabled People of Color Coalition or Chicagoland DPOC, you can email us at chicagolanddpoc@gmail.com or contact either TJ or myself at our emails. TJ's email is Gordon7. I take that back. It's TGORDO7@uic.edu. My email is jjpak@uic.edu. You can also find DPOC on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter under CHIDPOCC. And again, thanks to UIC's IDHD and the Autism Project for being part of and hosting our webinar. So with
Yes,
that,
and before
questions?
sorry about that. Before we conclude the webinar, I'd like to point out one more thing. If you want to support Chicagoland DPOC on this cool event called Giving Tuesday, where people all over the world are supporting organizations and causes they support and stand for. And in this instance, if you want to support DPOC by attending our events, or if you're a disabled person of color, you want to be a part of Chicagoland DPOC, or if you would like to give to the to the UIC DPOC fund that would fund accessibility needs for Chicagoland DPOC, as well as help disabled people of color come into the DHD program. Feel free to check out our video in the chat. You can also find the video on Facebook about Giving Tuesday.
And take one or two questions if there are any. Thank you, TJ.
So this is Rushi Hasnan. I'm part of the teaching team with Adrian, DHD for 100, the service learning capstone, and just want to do a shout out to this incredible partnership and this very important dialogue that often does not take place in terms of the complexities and the experiences that I was able to hear during this forum. A question I have, and I'm very proud of the students that have been part of this facilitation, and so thankful for the important partnership that we have with DPOC, our first time partners for DHD for 100. The question I have is, I know that we've gone over the time, but what would be a next important step in respect to keeping this conversation alive in terms of action and connectivity? This is something that I think is always important when you have something so powerful, so meaningful, so relevant for those of us who come from communities of color in a context of disability.
So we started off the 16-week semester actually thinking very broad, and we were very much humbled that 16 weeks probably wouldn't be enough for our initial idea. And initially, our Lino and I's goal was to reach out to actual youth who were getting ready to matriculate out of school, or who were kind of just in like that limbo area in between, you know, graduating and not necessarily going to college, because not everyone goes to college, and like that's totally fine. So we wanted to initially get those students and have them form essentially what we did tonight in an hour and a half, for them to come together, to talk with one another, and to come up with issues and possible solutions to some of the topics that we talked about tonight. And to give them that safe space to be with each other and have community, but also have like this big brother figure of DPOC to, you know, help supervise them in some sort of a partnership mentorship program. So we would love for that to happen. And we would love for those discussions, instead of being led by, you know, I don't know, I guess like older voices in the community, no offense, but you know, to have that young voice, because that is going to be the future of a lot of the topics that we talk about, and to have them come together and to do that. So we need to think next steps for sure. And I'm more excited after this conversation to get that started. So yeah, I think hopefully we have some believers now who are, you know, willing to pass on this information.
Yeah, and I think it even goes further. You know, the fact that we are conversating today on this platform, you know, particularly, you know, we're all coming from so many different type of neighborhoods and not even knowing it, you know, because we're just on a laptop. But the fact alone, having these type of meetings, webinars, is, you know, allows access, you know, for all communities to, you know, join, interact, and overall talk about, you know, the barriers or the issues that are, you know, relevant in, you know, particularly Chicagoland area, obviously, but to, you know, even later bigger goals, pushing that to a larger, you know, perspective, you know, macro system. But with time, obviously, but I think it starts here, you know, like with these conversations with, you know, we had 30 plus people, and that's, you know, something small, but I think in light, it takes, you know, that conversation for people to share with others. And that's how, you know, networking goes.
And I would agree. I think this is a great start. And I know TJ and I are grateful to you all and do plan to continue this conversation to find out, because we do want to hear and learn from young adults and youth of color with disabilities. We're by no means the experts in all of this, and we want to learn and work in partnership with youth and be a resource for them as well. I really do hate to cut this short, but it's going on like close to quarter till, and I think we could go on all night, but I want to say, I just for respecting people's time and our captioners' time, want to conclude it here and just say again, thank you all for being here. We will host the recording, and when the recording is finalized and available, we will make an announcement via our listserv or Facebook, or I think we also have your email as well. So thank you all and have a good night. Thank you. Again, a special thanks to Lino, Corbin, Esmeralda, TJ, and Brittany, and Noah for your expertise and wisdom. And good night, everybody.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you. Good night.